New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. India welcomes the release of 8 Indian nationals detained in Qatar. 7 out of the 8 of them have returned to India.
We have waited almost 18 months to be back in India. We're extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji. It certainly wouldn't have been possible without his personal intervention.
After France, Mauritius and Sri Lanka to get UPI connectivity, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi along with heads of state of both the countries to witness the historic launch. RuPay card services will also be launched in Mauritius. In Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif's party PMLN and Bilawal Bhutto's PPP decide to work together. PMLN also secures support of PTI-backed independent. Imran Khan's party to continue protests over poll rigging. And in tennis, India's Sumit Nagal scripts history by entering top 100 for the first time in his career to become a player ranked 98 in the world as champion of the ATP Chennai Open Challenger. In a big diplomatic win, Qatar released all the 8 Indian nationals in its custody on Sunday. In its official statement, the Ministry of External Affairs welcomed the decision, saying the Government of India welcomes the release of 8 Indian nationals working for Doordarshan global company who were detained in Qatar. 7 out of 8 of them have returned to India. We appreciate the decision by the Amir of the State of Qatar to enable the release and homecoming of these nationals. Upon their arrival in India, the nationals expressed happiness and thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his personal intervention.
Without the intervention of Prime Minister Modi, it wouldn't have been.
We have waited almost 18 months to be back in India. We're extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji. It certainly wouldn't have been possible without his personal intervention and that equation with the Emir of Qatar. I think we are grateful to the Government of India, the bottom of our heart, for the every effort that has been made, and this day wouldn't have been possible without it.
वापस इंडिया पहुंच गए हम सेफ एंड साउंड और डेफिनेटली ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर श्री मोदी को धन्यवाद करना चाहेंगे कि उनके पर्सनल इंटरवेंशन से ये पॉसिबल हुआ और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ कतार के हिज एक्सेलेंसी द अमीर को कि उन्होंने ये होने दिया.
All right, so those are the reactions coming in from the nationals, Indian nationals, who returned to India. And this is indeed a big diplomatic win because Qatar has released all the 8 Indian nationals in its custody. And as per the official statement, the Ministry of External Affairs welcomed the decision. The Government of India has welcomed the release of 8 Indian nationals working for Doordarshan global company who were detained in Qatar. As we know, 7 out of 8 of them have returned back to India. And just a while back, we heard the reactions of the Indian nationals. They thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the intervention by the Indian government. And just a quick backgrounder. Captain Navteej Singh Gill, Captain Saurav Vashisht, Commander Purnendu Tiwari, Captain Birendra Kumar Verma, Commander S. Pakala, Commander Sanjeev Gupta, Commander Amit Nagpal and Sailor Ragesh. They were arrested in August and they had been jailed since then in Qatar. And today we see it as a big diplomatic win for India. 7 of the 8 released by the by Qatar, the Indian nationals have returned to India. A Qatari court had sentenced them to death on October 26th last year. And in fact, then also India had said that it was deeply shocked by the verdict and that it was exploring all the legal options. It was in December last year that the capital punishment was commuted, again because of India's diplomatic intervention. And just a while back, we also heard the Navy veterans thanking Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the efforts put in by the Indian government in securing their release. They talked of how they waited for almost 18 months to be back in India. The 8 Indian Navy veterans, they were in custody in Qatar. They were jailed in Qatar over alleged spying charges, which were refuted by these Navy personnel. After an 18-month jail stay in Qatar, they have returned back to India. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has welcomed the release and the return of the 7 Indians. 8 of them have been released and 7 have returned to India. They work for Dara Global Company. And the External Affairs Ministry's statement is up on your screens. The Government of India welcomes the release of 8 Indian nationals working for the Dara Global Company who were detained in Qatar. 7 out of the 8 of them have returned to India. We appreciate the decision by the Amir of the State of Qatar to enable the release and homecoming of these nationals. So the big news, it could not have been better Monday morning today as we see the Government of India efforts paying off, intervention finally paying off. The death sentence of these 8 Navy personnel was commuted in December, and today we see these nationals, Indian nationals, returning to India. They thanked Prime Minister and the Government of India for its intervention and helping in securing their release from Qatar. 7 out of the 8 of the detained Indians in Qatar have returned to India. And these are the visuals of the 8 Navy men, Navy veterans who returned to India. Captain Navteej Singh Gill, Captain Saurav Vishisht, Captain Purnendu Tiwari, Captain Birendra Kumar Verma, Commander S. Pakala, Commander Sanjeev Gupta, Commander Amit Nagpal and Sailor Rajesh. They had been arrested in August and they had been jailed since then. They had been arrested on alleged spying charges. At that time also, the Indian government had expressed deep shock and had talked of securing the release and exploring the legal options. Let's listen in to the reactions of these Navy veterans once again, where they appreciate the efforts of the Indian government led by Prime Minister Modi.
Without the intervention of Prime Minister Modi, it wouldn't have been.
We have waited almost 18 months to be back in India. We're extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji. It certainly wouldn't have been possible without his personal intervention and that equation with the Emir of Qatar. I think we are grateful to the Government of India, the bottom of our heart, for the every effort that has been made, and this day wouldn't have been possible without it.
वापस इंडिया पहुंच गए हम सेफ एंड साउंड और डेफिनेटली ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर श्री मोदी को धन्यवाद करना चाहेंगे कि उनके पर्सनल इंटरवेंशन से ये पॉसिबल हुआ और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ कतार के हिज एक्सेलेंसी द अमीर को कि उन्होंने ये होने दिया.
All right, so in just a while from now, we will have a guest joining in and we will have more insights into this. But for our viewers who are joining us just now, these are the visuals we're getting for you of the 7 Navy personnel who returned to India. And in a big diplomatic win for India, India secured the release of 8 of the Navy personnel, 8 Navy personnel who had been detained in Qatar they had been accused of spying charges, and they had been jailed in Qatar since August last year. And in December, the Indian government succeeded in getting their death sentence commuted. And today we see these Indian nationals back in the country. 7 of the 8 nationals who were released, they returned back to the country. Vice Admiral Pradip Chauhan, Director General of the National Maritime. Yes, just give me a second. The National Maritime Foundation is joining us for more. Good morning, sir. Welcome to DD India. This could not have been a better Monday morning, isn't it? We see the Navy personnel return to India, death sentence commuted. How big a diplomatic win is it for the country?
Well, I don't think it gets much bigger than that, because when a country stands by its soldiers, sailors, and airmen, both in times of difficulty and in times of joy, it sends a huge message across, not just to India, but to the world at large. And as a diplomatic win, I think this is marvelous. It is entirely due to the untiring efforts of the Minister of External Affairs and the Prime Minister of India. Both of them have spared no effort at all in bringing these stalwarts home. I know many of these people myself, and I think that we are extremely proud of the way that they have handled themselves, extremely proud and thrilled at the way that the government has handled the situation. Yeah.
All right, sir. This brings me to the next aspect of the case, because I read that the trial was shrouded in secrecy with very scant information given out, and also on the charges and the evidence against these servicemen. How difficult, or how tough was it a task up the sleeves of the Indian government to secure the release of these Indian personnel in another country, the trial of which was kept secret? How tough or how difficult was it?
I think that it wouldn't have been easy at any stage, because these sorts of issues are mired in international geopolitics, and the various countries that are involved and various entities that are involved for their own purposes tend to complicate matters enormously. Now, India and Qatar have an outstanding relationship. Even in economic terms, Qatar is the largest supplier of natural gas to India by leaps and bounds. And overall, the relationship between India and Qatar has been good. In fact, has been extremely good. So how tough was it? I think it was pretty tough, because there were other complications involved. Nobody through the open sources anyway knew much of what was happening. The charges were patently ludicrous, spying and trying to sell material across from one country abroad to another country abroad, allegedly. These are not activities that are undertaken by officers of the caliber that we have seen and we have sent, and who are now back in their mother country, thank goodness. So how tough was it? I think it was very, very tough. I think it was very delicate, and it was full of complications. And I think that the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, and Prime Minister Modi have demonstrated uncommon skill, as has the Indian mission in Doha, in trying to ensure that the gravity with which this particular matter was to be dealt with was indeed dealt with at the levels that it needed to be, and that the charges, which, as I said earlier, are just patently ludicrous, were finally dropped in the sense that the death sentence was commuted, and thereafter the repatriation has been permitted. So I think that one step at a time has been taken, but with extreme delicacy. And this is a classic example of Indian diplomacy at its best. So I cannot fault a single point in the process. The delay for the families was heart-wrenching, I'm sure, but in the end, Indian diplomacy did have its moment of glory, and hugely deservedly so.
Yes, it is indeed a moment for glory for the Indian government. But sir, as the DG of National Maritime Foundation, help us understand how grave are spying charges, because for our viewers, for a common person to know that these servicemen have returned to the country is big indeed. But for somebody being accused of spying charges in international waters, what does it mean? Help us understand the case.
Well, the case was that these are people who went across to join a company. The company had been contracted by the Qatar government, and it was in fact an exceedingly promising situation. So more and more people were going there. They were training the Qatari naval personnel, and their training credentials are quite impeccable. They were training them in navigation, in direction, in operations. Now, when a country starts to enter this sort of activity through a private entity, in this particular case, other private entities that are attempting to also muscle into the same space tend to play what we might call, and what our viewers would call, dirty tricks. And so, as a result of that, charges of espionage were, in fact, I rather think, fabricated. Having said that, are charges of espionage serious? Of course they're very serious. Can they be negotiated easily? No, because once a government, a foreign government, declares that these people are, being held on charges of espionage, once that declaration is made, the government is forced to sort of stand by its declaration until either some incontrovertible proof to the contrary emerges. Even then, the government would be hard-pressed to simply undertake a volte-face and say, okay, we made a mistake, oops, sorry. So governments, having made a statement and having levied charges, need to then investigate these charges to the letter and spirit of their particular laws, and since laws are not common. So what happened was that there was some allegation that these 8 officers of ours were, in fact, ex-officers of ours were in fact engaged in espionage, and the details of that were never particularly well known or made well clear. Merely on the suspicion of espionage, it seems a bit harsh to mete out the kind of treatment that was meted out to them. How hard is it to negotiate a case of espionage? It is very hard. It occurs at a number of levels: political, bureaucratic, diplomatic. The Navy itself was deeply engaged in the process. Our defense advisor in Doha, the diplomatic mission itself. So and it doesn't happen in one fell swoop that we say, oh, okay, here's the magic wand and abracadabra, and they're all free. It happens through painstaking negotiations, and many nuances are explored before such an outcome can be achieved. So when you go abroad and you decide that you want to work for somebody, you should be exceedingly careful about the manner in which you undertake your activities, so that you do not land up in a situation as grave as this one.
It's indeed, the situation was grave and serious, but for a government to secure the release of the citizens, perhaps being successful in making the other country commute the death sentence, saving the nationals from the clutches of death, this indeed is a Herculean task. And it also speaks volumes of again, the efforts that have been put in by the government, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And also, somewhere down the line, it also sends a message of the changing of the image of India on the global page, the power which India is emerging as on the global page, isn't it?
Absolutely. In purely legal terms, these situations can become quite knotty. And so it is not just the law that can be applied in isolation. You do need significant diplomatic skills and effort, and then you need the political level. And what can a citizen of India say but to praise to the skies the political push that was provided at no lesser a level than the prime minister's. Now, political push itself is a function of the image that the country has and the heft that the country's political leaders have. And in this case, India, I think that, this is tied up to also the resurgence of India as Bharat.
Yes.
The simple heft that India now enjoys, which is not a function solely of its military or its, but it's a comprehensive image that India now enjoys. Even if you take the latest, harshest of the foreign journals and their ranking of countries, we will certainly be in the top 10 in any ranking, and in many cases we will be in the top 5. So it's not just that India's GDP is developing, which of course is critical, but the economic, the material, the societal, the military, the diplomatic, the informational heft that India now enjoys was not something that could have happened 10 years ago. And if this had happened, this incident had occurred 10 years ago, I rather doubt that we could have had quite so spectacular an achievement.
Yes, indeed. We've seen the Indian government come to the rescue of the Indians stranded abroad in view of, difficult political situations in the respective country they were staying, they were living, or for that matter, countries subject to natural calamities. But this is indeed a different and a unique case. Do we see any other such cases between other countries that have happened in the past?
Yes,
not just India, but other countries as well.
Yes, you do. But the number of successful outcomes is far and few between. And the great commonality that lies between the countries that you do see other than India is simply that the countries involved in the extrication of their nationals who are accused in one way or the other are actually major powers. A minor power cannot achieve the kind of protection that its citizens expect when they are abroad. And so when we provide consular assistance, for example, every country provides consular assistance to its nationals, but for its nationals who are accused of major transgressions of the local law, in this case, the accusation was, however ludicrous, the accusation was one of espionage, and in other countries too. I'm sure you're familiar with the period of the Cold War, where the Russians and the Americans negotiated from time to time to have their nationals released. But remember, these were the two superpowers. If you took a country which was a minor power, I rather think that they would be dismissed out of hand. The fact that India, now bringing it back to India, the fact that India has been able to successfully come to the rescue of its nationals stranded abroad in extremely awkward and trying circumstances is a manifestation of the sheer heft, the sheer weight that India is able to bring to bear, and the image of India as a country that is rapidly moving from being a regional power to being a global power. That means rapidly moving on the trajectory of becoming a great power. Only great powers can exercise this kind of diplomatic virtuosity.
All right, sir, we'll continue this interaction, but at present I'm joined in with my colleague Amrit Pal Singh, who is joining us. Amrit, we just were interacting with our guest, Vice Admiral Pradip Chauhan, Director General of the National Maritime Foundation, and he put into perspective for us how important is this a win for the Indian government. Help us understand how far have the ties between India and Qatar come to this day, when Indian government has been successful in getting the death sentence commuted and securing the release of the Indians back home?
It's not just important for the government of India. It is important for every Indian, for the families who've been through an emotional trauma, for reporters like me who've been covering the case, for people like Admiral Chauhan who are from the naval family, who have been emotionally invested in this case, have been watching the case, for every Indian viewer who did not know much details. These are very decorated officers and men of former naval personnel who have been back to this, who are now back in the country, and one will be back soon, Commander Pernendu Tewari, who is back, who's out of the jail and is at his home in Doha. But because of some technicalities, travel document technicalities, could not travel with the rest of them, but he'll be back by today evening or by tomorrow. So it is a great feeling for everybody. Most importantly, the families. It is, of course, for the GOI or the government of India because of the way the case was pursued at all levels, at the legal level, providing legal assistance to them, legally fighting it, diplomatically fighting in, and finally the political intervention at the highest level, which led to these former naval personnel being freed after being granted a pardon by the Amir of Qatar. And that is a rare occurrence. It does not, in espionage cases, the Amir of Qatar does provide pardons to people during Ramzan, etc. But in cases of, espionage, that is very, very rare because the charges were of espionage and it was being linked to Israel. And given, the emotions between that prevail in the Arab countries for Israel in such kind of a complicated case, it is very rare. So it is a diplomatic victory, and of course it is a victory, as I said, for all Indians. Pretty, yeah.
Yes, indeed, Amrit. I put this to the guest also. What does it also tell us about the clout of India on the global page, the change of image of India on the global page? Because you also explained to us how difficult were the circumstances. But again, my question would be, it was indeed tough, but then it also speaks volumes of the leadership of the country on the global page, how it is being seen, how it is being perceived, and the overall change of the country, of the image of the country on the global page, isn't it?
Priti, is that question for Admiral Chauhan?
Yeah. No, that was for you, Amrit.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. How are you asking me how important is it for India at the global stage?
Yes,
is that what your question?
Yes. I'll just repeat it. Yes, I'll just repeat it. You explained to us how difficult was it for the Indian government, but at the same time, it also speaks volumes of how, the clout of the Indian government or the clout of the country is changing on the global page, that, an international country commuted the charges, and India successfully really got the release of the Indians, got the death sentence commuted. They are back in the country. So it also speaks volumes of the leadership of the country on the global page, and also how the image of the country is evolving on the global page, isn't it?
I think it speaks about a diplomatic heft. We've always had friendly relations with Qatar. There are about 8 lakh Indian people working in Qatar. They send a lot of remittances back to India. It's a friendly relationship between the two countries. But it speaks about your increasing diplomatic heft that you've been able to wrangle this from the Qatari authorities. And as I said, they doggedly pursued the case, provided legal assistance, fought it out legally in their courts, diplomatic engagement with Qatar, diplomatic pressure on them, then the political intervention, that too at the highest level. So it does speak about your diplomatic heft, which is increasing as you increasingly become significant on the world stage. And as Admiral was saying, you're emerging from being a regional power moving towards being a global power. We've seen it not just in this case, but at other fora, at G20, or how in the UN or other multilateral institutions, fora where your voice is heard and your voice is taken seriously. So yes, it speaks about your increasing diplomatic heft that you've been able to secure the release of our naval personnel in such a complicated case.
Yes, it was not just about securing the release of stranded Indians that we've seen in the past, owing to the respective country facing political instability, or for that matter, the respective countries stuck with a natural calamity. But here we had seen these Navy personnel were stuck with death sentence, in fact, and how grave and serious was it? All right, Amrit, we leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with your inputs and that analysis. So we had inputs coming in from Vice Admiral Pradip Chauhan, retired Director General of the National Maritime Foundation, and we thank him again for joining us on DD India and sharing his perspective, sharing his insights, and helping us understand how important and how tough was it for the Indian government to secure the release of the Indians who were stuck in Qatar with a death sentence. For our viewers who've just joined in, India has successfully secured the release of 8 of the Navy personnel who were stuck with a death sentence in Qatar. They were accused of spying charges, and it was in December last year that the spy charges were commuted. And today, these Indians are breathing in India. India has secured the release. 7 out of these 8 Indians have returned to India today morning. So that was the top story we were covering through the morning today. Up next, we're heading for a short break, but we've still got lots more to show you. Donald Trump has until the end of today, that is February 12th, to file for appealing his immunity ruling. India asset managers moving into Gift City as a gateway for global capital and financial services for the economy. We tell you the details ahead. In the Indian state of Bihar, Nitish Kumar-led National Democratic Alliance government to face the floor test today.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India. Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour, and I'm Preeti. Let's get you a quick recap of the top stories once again. India welcomes release of 8 Indian nationals detained in Qatar. 7 out of 8 of them have returned to India. After France, Mauritius and Sri Lanka to get UPI connectivity, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi along with heads of state of both the countries to witness the historic launch. RuPay card services will also be launched in Mauritius. In Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif's party PMLN and Bilawal Bhutto's PPP decide to work together. PMLN also secures support of PTI-backed independent Imran Khan's party to continue protests over poll rigging. And in tennis, India Sumit Nagal scripts history by entering top 100 for the first time in his career to become a player ranked 98 in the world as champion of the ATP Chennai Open Challenger. Former US President Donald Trump has until the end of today, that is February 12th, to file an appeal to the country's top court against last week's ruling, which rejected his claim of immunity from criminal prosecution during his time in office. Our US correspondent Jagriti Dave has more on this.
The clock is ticking for Donald Trump's legal team. They're arguing that the former president has presidential immunity regarding charges that he faces where he's been accused of trying to subvert the results of the 2020 general election. Those claims were thrown out by a federal court here in Washington, D.C. last Tuesday, that same court also set a February the 12th deadline for Donald Trump to appeal that ruling at the U.S. Supreme Court, which could potentially delay the start of a trial even further. Now, Donald Trump faces 4 criminal cases, which he is arguing are politically motivated in an effort to damage his re-election campaign. But a recent CNN poll is saying that most Americans want a verdict on the election subversion charges before they go to vote in this year's election. And that same poll is also saying that most people think that Donald Trump is likely to pardon himself should he retake the White House this November. In Washington, Jagrati Dave reporting for DD India.
The 3 main political parties in Pakistan intensified their efforts for the formation of a coalition government after the country faced a hung parliament after general elections marred by allegations of rigging. The Pakistan People's Party has agreed to be part of a coalition government on the condition that Bilawal Bhutto Zardari will be made the Prime Minister. Nawaz Sharif-led Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz managed to secure the support of an independent candidate backed by Imran Khan's PTI. Also, Imran Khan's party, along with some others, held protests in parts of Pakistan amidst allegations of widespread vote rigging targeting Khan's political party and other nationalist groups. They have called to continue peaceful protests. India's Unified Payment Interface, or the UPI services, will be launched in Mauritius and Sri Lanka today. Besides this, RuPay card services will be launched in Mauritius. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of Mauritius Pravind Jugnauth, and Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe will witness the historic launch via video conferencing. The launch will enable availability of UPI settlement services for Indian nationals travelling to Sri Lanka and Mauritius, as well as for Mauritian nationals living or in fact travelling to India. Further, the extension of RuPay card services in Mauritius will enable Mauritian banks to issue cards based on RuPay mechanism in Mauritius and facilitate usage of RuPay card for settlements both in India and Mauritius. Given India's robust cultural and people-to-people linkages with Sri Lanka and Mauritius, the launch will benefit a wide cross-section of people through a faster and seamless digital transaction experience and enhanced digital connectivity between the countries. DD India correspondent Dr. Ahmed M Faruki joins us from Colombo, Sri Lanka. Ahmed, good morning. We've just given a broad outline of the UPI services being launched in Sri Lanka. Let us understand from you, how big is this a day for the Indian travellers who will be travelling to Sri Lanka? Because after France, Mauritius and Sri Lanka will be accepting the UPI payments from India. UPI transactions.
Good morning, Preeti.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, Preeti. Yes, sorry for interruption. Actually, you see, this is a historic day for the Indian travelers and the Indian diaspora who are living in Sri Lanka and Mauritius. But in addition to that, it's also a historic day for Sri Lanka and Mauritius as well. Primarily because, you see, India is the fintech leader of the entire world, which has the global expertise as well as, the kind of mastery that it has in terms of having the digital transactions, which go beyond any other normal countries' numbers. In effect, if we see in 2022 alone, India had surpassed the total digital transactions of the next 4 countries in the top 5. So having cornered around 46% of the global digital transactions in real time. That shows India's expertise in this sector. And these 2 countries, Sri Lanka and Mauritius, will be looking forward to utilizing the expertise that India has in their own regions as well. To begin with, Sri Lanka already has a Lanka QR, which is being managed by Lanka Pay. And this is present in most of the merchant establishments. But it's not as popular and as, seamless in terms of the kind of usage as you have in India with regard to UPI. UPI has crossed 75% of all the digital transactions in India in last year alone. And that shows, the easy adaptation and adaptability of this interface for the people. Now, this launch will actually help Indian travelers to a large extent, because you can go to any place, you can forget your cash, but your mobile is always with you, and you can transact real time from your bank account as if you are traveling somewhere within India itself. You are traveling somewhere locally, and that is the kind of benefit that you have. Earlier, you had to have the hassle of converting your currency from Indian national rupees to dollars, from dollars to Lankan rupees, or to Mauritian currency. But now, that kind of hassle is not there. That has been completely eliminated. With today's launch, the Indian traveler or the Indian diaspora, whoever are living in these places, they can directly use their Indian bank accounts and make a transaction, which will almost be like how they would do it in India. And the backend will take care of the transaction, which has to go to these respective merchant establishments. And it will be a win-win for all.
Yes, indeed.
On one end, the traveler...
Yes, this will be a win-win.
On one end, the traveler has been benefited. On the other end, you see, this is also going to be a game changer with regard to the tourism sector.
All right, yes, it will be a game changer with regard to the tourism sector. But Ahmed, help us understand, from when will it be implemented and how will this be executed?
Preeti, today with the launch, it will directly start from today itself. As I'm told, Lanka Pay has made all the systems necessary. NPIL has put all the systems necessary for the linkages between the two interfaces. And it is, as they say, it is at the ready-go kind of a status. And once it is launched today, and that's around in the afternoon, at around 1 o'clock Indian Standard Time, the transactions can start happening immediately at that point of time. To begin with, in Sri Lanka, we have 77,000 touch points which are already put in the first phase of the development of the cross-linkage between Lanka Pay and UPI. Over the next 3-4 months, I'm told that Lanka Pay will expand the touch points to around 4 lakhs in total across the island.
All right, Ahmed, also in France, it was the Eiffel Tower which welcomed and which accepted the UPI interface. In Sri Lanka, do we have special tourist destinations that will be accepting UPI payments, or is it for regular transactions as well, which the Indian tourists can resort to UPI?
Preeti, as I said, all the 77,000 touch points that are present in various parts of the island are already ready to be incorporated into this linkage of Lanka Pay and UPI. There are several specific tourist locations, but in addition to that, there are several supermarkets, including Cargill's Food City, which is a prominent supermarket in Sri Lanka that has also been roped in, and they will also start accepting UPI payments from today itself.
All right, Ahmed, we leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details. And from here, we now turn focus to the Korean Peninsula. North Korean state media said that the country has developed a new ballistic control system for a multiple rocket launcher along with controllable shells. It said the Academy of Defense Science, which oversees the country's missile development, conducted a ballistic control test firing of 240 mm caliber controllable multiple rocket launcher shells. A narrowly divided U.S. Senate moved closer to passing a $95.34 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan on Sunday, showing undiminished bipartisanship despite growing opposition from Republican hardliners and Donald Trump. The Democratic-led Senate cleared the latest procedural hurdle and moved the foreign aid measure further on towards an ultimate vote in the coming days. Ukraine's defense intelligence claims Russian forces in occupied Ukraine are using Starlink terminals produced by Elon Musk's SpaceX for satellite internet, and it is beginning to take on a systemic nature. In a statement, Ukrainian Defense Ministry said the terminals were being used by units like Russia's 83rd Air Assault Brigade, which is fighting in the partially occupied eastern region of Donetsk. The remarks were Ukraine's first official statement about Russia's alleged use of Starlink. Elon Musk's SpaceX company, which owns Starlink, says it does not do business of any kind with Russia's government or military, and they will investigate the claim and take actions to deactivate the terminal if confirmed. In a post on Sunday made on X, Musk said no Starlinks have been sold directly or indirectly to Russia. Finland's former Prime Minister Alexander Stubb won Finland's presidential election on Sunday, defeating Liberal Green Party member Pekka Haavisto. Alexander Stubb will also be responsible for its foreign policy, including the recently approved NATO members' stance towards Russia, and will serve as Finland's commander-in-chief. Stubb will replace Sauli Niinisto, who is retiring after 2 6-year terms. Stubb, a member of the mainstream centre-right National Coalition Party, beat former Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto of the centre-left Green Party in the runoff vote after securing 51.6% of the votes against Haavisto's 48.4%. Secretary General of ASEAN, Kao Kim Horn, arrived at India's capital, New Delhi, on Sunday evening for a 5-day visit. Now, this is the first official visit by Kao to India since he assumed charge in January 2023. During the visit, Secretary General of ASEAN is scheduled to have meetings with India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and other dignitaries in Delhi. He will also deliver a lecture at Sapru House in New Delhi and also address a gathering at Nalanda University in Rajgir. The Nalanda University leads the ASEAN-India network of universities. Kao will visit Mabodhi Temple Complex, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Gaya. Engagement with ASEAN is an important pillar of India's Act East policy, which has entered into its 10th year, as well as its vision for the wider Indo-Pacific. India supports the priorities set by Lao PDR in its ASEAN chairmanship for the year 2024 under the theme ASEAN, Enhancing Connectivity and Resilience. Now, several Indian asset managers are moving or planning to move to India's newly developed high-tech financial hub, the Gift City, located in the western state of Gujarat, in a bid to get better access to India's capital markets. Some offshore fund business currently operating from financial centers such as Dubai and Singapore are also expected to move into the Gift City. The asset managers are forming up their plans of relocating to the high-tech hub with an aim to optimally tap the potential of the Indian stock market, which currently moved up to the 4th position globally. The combined value of shares listed on the Indian exchanges reached $4.33 trillion in January this year, overtaking Hong Kong, which stands at $4.29 trillion. The Indian government is also promoting Gujarat International Finance Tech City, better known as the Gift City, as a gateway for global capital and financial services for the economy, and is trying to attract companies through tax breaks and other incentives. In the Indian state of Bihar, Nitish Kumar-led National Democratic Alliance government will face the floor test on Monday. On the first day of the assembly session, the NDA government will prove the majority claim of the government in the state assembly. A series of meetings were held by the leaders of the political parties to thwart any possibility of defection. Parties are trying to flock together their MLAs to rule out the threat of poaching from their rival outfits. National Democratic Alliance leaders have said that they will confidently prove the majority in the House of 243 members. On the other hand, the opposition is tight-lipped over its strategy in the House. Meanwhile, as the Ram Temple in Ayodhya, the ancient holy city in India's Uttar Pradesh state, continues to record number of visitors and devotees, it has been receiving generous donations, setting new records. In just 15 days since its opening, the temple has received rupees 12.8 crore in offerings, marking a significant increase as compared to pre-consecration ceremony figures. Over 30 lakh devotees visited the temple in 15 days, with the average daily footfall of 2 lakh. Donations have also seen a sharp rise, with the highest single-day collection reaching 3.17 crore on the day of the consecration on January 22nd. The average monthly donation before consecration was 40 to 50 lakh rupees. it has skyrocketed to over 12.8 crore rupees in just 15 days. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will pay a two-day visit to the United Arab Emirates beginning Tuesday. During his visit, the Prime Minister will hold wide-ranging talks with President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and also inaugurate the first Hindu temple in Abu Dhabi. Up next, we get you a detailed report by DD India's Meghna Dev.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will pay an official visit to the UAE from 13th to 14th February. Looking at the frequent high-level exchanges between both the leaders, this will be Prime Minister Modi's 7th visit to the UAE since 2015 and the third in the last 8 months. During the visit, Prime Minister will hold bilateral meetings with President of UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. PM Modi will also meet Vice President of UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. At his invitation, PM Modi will participate in the World Government Summit 2024 to be held in Dubai as guest of honor and deliver a special keynote address at the summit. On 13th February, PM Modi will be addressing the Indian community at an event, Ahlan Modi, in Zayed Sports City in Abu Dhabi. The event is going to be the biggest Indian community summit in UAE. On 14th February, PM Modi will inaugurate the Baps Mandir, the first Hindu temple in Abu Dhabi. The highly anticipated Baps Hindu Mandir, a magnificent pink sandstone temple built by Bochasa Navasi Akshar Purushottam Swaminarayan Sanstha, boasts intricate carvings and traditional architecture. It will serve as a spiritual sanctuary for the Hindu community in the UAE, estimated to be about 3.5 million. Meghna Dev's report, TD India.
And now we take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across India now. In preparation for the global promotion of the upcoming Mahakumbh 2025 in Prayagraj of India's Uttar Pradesh, the state government is planning to organize a social media conclave. Now, this initiative involves collaborating with both governmental and non-governmental agencies to reach a wide audience for the Mahakumbh 2025. The step has been taken to involve the non-governmental agencies also in the preparation. The two-day kite festival concludes in Mangaluru of South India's Karnataka. International kite flyers from 13 countries such as Thailand, Ukraine, Greece, Estonia, Sweden and others participated in the festival. The ideal conditions of good breeze during January and February make it a perfect time to organize kite festivals along the coastline of India's Karnataka. Let's get you updates from the world of sports now. India's Sumit Nagal scripted another remarkable feat on Sunday, becoming the 10th Indian and the first in 5 years to break into the top 100 of the ATP men's singles rankings. Nagal achieved the landmark win in Chennai Open title, an ATP Challenger event in the South Indian city. Sumit Nagal seeded second, defeated top seed Luca Nardi of Italy 6-1, 6-4 in an hour and 41 minutes. Having braved shoulder pain to reach the final of the Challenger event for the 8th time, Nagal won his 5th Challenger title and his second one at home. Sumit Nagal will move to number 98 in the men's singles charts on Monday. He was ranked 121 in the men's singles rankings before the start of the Chennai Open. He had gone closer to the top 100 after making an inspired run to the second round of the Australian Open. All right, going back to our top story, in a diplomatic win, Qatar released all the 8 Indian nationals in its custody on Sunday. In its official statement, the Ministry of External Affairs welcomed the decision, saying the Government of India welcomes the release of 8 Indian nationals working for Dahra Global Company who were detained in Qatar. 7 out of the 8 of them have returned to India. We appreciate the decision by the Amrit of the State of Qatar to enable the release and homecoming of these nationals. All right, our correspondent Amrit Pal Singh is joining us for more. Amrit, good morning. It could not have been a better Monday morning, a better start to the week that we see these Indian nationals return to India. Help us understand, how big was this?
Well, it's a big diplomatic victory, Preeti, that India has been able to secure the release of our former naval personnel, our Indian nationals who were implicated in a case in Qatar, a case of espionage. Of course, it was a very difficult and a trying case in which, of course, it was emotionally traumatic for the families and these naval personnel, and many of them are decorated personnel, who were working after their naval career with the Indian Navy, were working in a private company, Al-Dahara. They were working on a small stealth submarines project, Italian submarines, which had to be inducted into the Qatari Navy. They were arrested in 2022, in August 2022, March 23, the case starts, October 26th last year. They were awarded a death penalty. Then we saw the political intervention at the highest level. We saw legal assistance being provided to them. Then a court of appeal commutes their sentences to prison term, long-term prison sentences. And now finally the Amir of Qatar has provided them pardon, and we see these people back home, 7 of them. One will be coming, traveling either today or tomorrow, because there are some technicalities regarding his travel documents, etc. So, but he's free, he's in his home in Doha. So we saw all that play out, and as I said, it was a very, very difficult case, and generally getting pardon in cases of espionage is very, very difficult, and especially something which is related to Israel. You know the emotions that prevail in the Arab countries when it comes to espionage by Israel, etc. So we don't know how true these charges really were, because it was done by under wraps, given the sensitivity of the case. Not much details of the case are in public domain as of now. They will come in a due course of time, but we do know that the charges were about espionage. So the first stage was getting the trial through and getting the death sentence commuted, and then getting their release. So indeed, it is a diplomatic victory for India, in which was a very trying case, and a dogged pursuance of the case has led to this outcome. Priti.
All right, Amrit. Yes, indeed, it was a big diplomatic win for India. Thank you for joining in with those insights. All right, so we end this edition of DD India News Hour on this note of the big diplomatic win for India. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.